Hi, this is Tyler.
And this is Kellyanne, and we are the Jordans Create. Thank you for joining us. Today we're going to talk about self-acceptance
In the community of creatives. First, we want to just talk about, or at least define creatives, right? So,
who is a creative? What is a creative?
So, creating is basically having the power to create. And so we all have the power to create, but there's just different expressions of that creativity. And it's, as I think we discussed before, that the reason why we're able to create is because God is our creator. And so we're kind of mini creators in the sense that He's given us the ability to create and many different ways to express that. So
you would say then being a creative is a universal definition, something that everybody has the capacity to do.
Yeah.
Because we are created in that image.
Yeah.
Okay. So everybody's
just
a
different
creative.
ways of expressing it. Yeah.
So welcome. If you didn't know, you're always one of us.
It is important to know who you are and know who you are not. So I'm gonna let you kind of.
Well, I think that when you embrace your identity as a creative, it changes your perspective and how you relate to others and how you relate to yourselves. The things that you create become rooted in your identity, and therefore when those things get evaluated or judged or critiqued, or people offer their opinions on these things, they're now offering their opinion on an extension of who you are. So we have to know how to be able to accept that, how to navigate that, and how to handle it. Because if I'm an artist and I paint pictures, right, this is not just an ability that I have, it's also who I am. So when you say you don't like my pictures, I can easily take that as you don't like me, because this picture represents me. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes sense. That makes sense. And I think that's always the kind of fear in creating, or at least sharing the creation. I know for me, that critique, although it's important, and critique is really something that I value, it can also become a hindrance to your creativity, because you're thinking, with this particular person like this, or what will people say, or what will people do, or if I show this to this particular person who I think is like far beyond me, will they reject it? Will they accept it? And I think it's really important to know ultimately who you are as a creative and accept yourself for who you are.
Okay.
Even in spite of the critique you might receive. Now there's constructive critique, and then there are also people who will just try to be mean.
Let's flesh that out a little bit then. If it's really just, this is who I am, this is an extension of me, right? Is there really a place for critique in the things that you create?
I think there is definitely a place for critique, because there's always an opportunity to learn, and there's always an opportunity to grow. But the critique can be damaging if you don't already have the confidence in your work and in yourself. Then now you would see everything as an assault against who you are, instead of, you know what, that sounds like a good idea, maybe I'll try that, or this is not something that I do, or this is not something that's a part of my package, so I can't do that.
Okay.
You have to know yourself in order to know how far you can take it. Oh, this is something I'm willing to try, or this is not something that is for me. This is not the type of work that I create. That's not a route I want to go. Because sometimes people do put their own personal purposes onto others. Like,
Okay.
hey, you should do this type of music, or
Because
you
I do
should do
that
this.
type of music.
You know, it's a critique. Like it comes from a place of critique, but then they're now kind of imposing their own creative flow onto your work. And sometimes it can work, but other times you have to know yourself to know, hey, this is a boundary. I can't actually cross that, because then it's me becoming you instead of me being me.
Okay.
Do you kind of understand what I'm saying?
Yeah, you said you welcome critique. So does that mean that you feel like you are at that place where you have that confidence and that knowledge?
I welcome critique in different areas. So,
Okay.
if I'm writing a song and someone says, "Hey, maybe this could make it a little bit better," like, I'm willing to try. As you saw, like when we went to Tennessee,
Okay.
and my song was critiqued, and the suggestion was, I thought, something great. It wasn't outside of my scope. I think I have a pretty good understanding of who I am as a person, a creative person, and if I'm writing something and someone tells me to take it in a totally different direction that is completely just outside of my sphere, I welcome critique to a point, and I think you have to welcome it to a point.
Okay.
Or it can become someone trying to make you who they are.
Simple question for you then. Why do we have to welcome critique?
I think that's a great question. And because your questions are so amazing, I'm going to let you answer that one for yourself.
Okay, well, hopefully my answer is nearly as amazing as the question. It's just a question that popped up, but what was the question? I'm thinking so hard I forgot the question.
Wait a minute now. I think I'm losing the question.
Good, I've created.
Why do we need critique, and why is critique important for a creative person, or a person who's creating something?
Okay.
In terms of self-acceptance, why is it important?
Well, I think it's important because the things that we create have to have a relevance. They can't just be self-declarations of who we are in a void. Because if they are declarations of who we are is shaped by the people, things, circumstances around us. So we really can't have an accurate view of who we are without understanding those factors, and therefore I don't think we can create to our fullest potential without understanding those factors and how we interact with them and how they interact with us. And I think that we do have to draw a line between saying that the thing that I create represents me and the thing that I create is me.
I agree with that. I agree with that, because the challenge is, if someone critiques me, then they're actually critiquing me.
Somebody critiques what I've created.
Right, then they're actually critiquing me.
Right.
It's a complete assault and affront to who I am as a person.
Right.
We go through different things over time, and that does reflect what we create. Particularly, we are talking about creating artistically, musically, because that's kind of what we do. But yeah, it's definitely, our lives reflect our experiences, as I believe you kind of said earlier. Our lives reflect our experiences. Our lives reflect even the times. I remember a quote from Nina Simone, and she was like,
I was thinking about that.
Our art, our music should reflect the times that we're living in. That's an artist's responsibility.
If you're going to create truthful art.
If you're going to create truthful art, yes.
Because I think that you can create for different reasons. I don't think that everybody creates for the purpose of self-expression, But if the purpose of your creativity and the things that you create is self-expression, then I do think you have to be true to yourself and your circumstances, and like I said, how they interact. Because I think that's ultimately what it comes down to. It's self-expression. So we don't always do it consciously, but we're always doing it. And
Agreed.
anything that we create is gonna be an extension of us, even on a subconscious level. So I do think that we can take this outside of the barriers of the traditional creatives, you know, those that do art, music, visual arts, drama, dramatic performing arts, that kind of stuff.
Right.
And I do think that it transcends that. I do think that it is something that we deal with just on the level of human existence.
Right.
And
Exactly.
the human experience.
Exactly. Yeah. So as we're talking about self-acceptance, knowing yourself, knowing who you are, and knowing who you are not.
Right.
How does one get to the place of knowing themselves? I feel like I'm still very much on this journey. I mean, I'm about to turn 31. Wow. On this journey to knowing who I am as far as a person who creates, and what I create and why I create it, and what it is that comes out. How do you get to the place of knowing?
Well, I don't think that there is ever a final destination.
That was a trick question.
That's called on. Yeah, but you answered that yourself.
Darn.
And when we were talking about how we're always, you know, we're dynamic beings. You know, we're changing. We're constantly dealing in an environment that changes around us. Mm-hmm. So we can't stay the same, or at least not without very destructive results, I believe. Because, like we said in the pregnancy video, you know, I think life is tailored to change. So I don't think you can resist that successfully in the long run.
And particularly as being believers, right? Like, so God is always trying to make us, mold us, shape us, make
Right.
us better,
Right.
make us as He is. And so that process is a never-ending process.
Yeah.
I mean, I can think of songs that I wrote as a new believer, and songs that I've written most recently, and it's just completely different because I'm different.
Right.
You
And
know,
that
I'm more mature. I have a better understanding of myself. I have a better understanding of who God is.
right. And that does not negate the fact that you will have a better of an understanding of yourself
In the
5 years from now.
Exactly.
Right.
And the years to come.
Right. Agreed.
Hopefully sooner rather than later. But
Well, I think either or, you know, it's never going to stop.
It's not.
As long as we live, we will
process.
experience change, and therefore I think we will respond to change and reflect those responses in the things that we create.
Yeah, definitely. So knowing who you are,
And like you said, knowing who you're not, and in terms of like, oh, I don't want to pursue this because this doesn't really line up with the things that I do. And I will say that a general answer to the question, can you know, and when do you know, I think that you only find that out through discovering and through searching it. You know, we don't just sit in a bubble and realize, oh, I'm this, I'm that, I'm this, I'm that. You know, it comes, like we keep saying, through our experiences and through our interactions. So I don't think that you can find out who you are without exploring it. And that looks like different things, you know. I like one of my favorite rappers, Rakim. He still writes freestyles and rhymes to this day. But he says, you know, sometimes, you know, he just has to take a break from writing and live a little bit before he goes back to write again. And I know that's not something that's particular to him. I've heard many artists say that. But you do have to leave room for your experiences to breathe out so that you can express them.
Yeah, I know some people going to this event last week, God and Gigs. If you guys are not following them, godandgigs.com. Their podcast, their website, totally amazing stuff for artists. I encourage you to follow them. But we were talking about what space people creatives create from musically, and some are saying that they can create right in that moment that they're feeling those emotions, and others like myself, I have to process that and then be able to write it. In those moments I can't necessarily write. I don't want to write. I don't feel like I can write, But after I've made it through, or I've made it over that hump, or I've made it through that experience, I'm able to sort out my emotions, and I'm able to actually write from that place. But in that moment, I can't. So it's kind of cool to hear other perspectives about it, which is why I think just bringing it back to knowing who you are, it would be a challenge for me, or for someone to say, hey, you need to write how you feel right now. That would kind of push against who I am, because that's not who I am. And just me, period. I'm a thinker. In that moment I may react, but it's easier for me to ruminate on things and then process it and then come back, as opposed to just, how can we solve this? This is how we can solve it. I have to really think it through.
But I will say that we do definitely have to have a clear view on ourselves, because there are so many overlaps in so many places where it breaks down. Because for you, again, I understand what you're saying, and I completely agree. But at the same time, you do have this incredible gift to be able to just, on the spot, create a song.
That is true. Praise God for
you can't just, like, I can start playing music, and you can just open up your mouth, and there'll be a melody, there'll be lyrics, there'll be a structure, and all we have to do is go back in a little bit and polish things up. Me, on the other hand, I always liken myself to like a sculptor, somebody who has to chisel out a little piece at a time. It's a very long process for me to write something, but at the same time, at the end of that process, I understand completely what I've created. So like, it might take me a week and a half, 3 weeks, whatever, to write a verse. But by the time I've written that verse, I know the flow inside out. I remember all the words. I can do it at different tempos. I can do it to different rhythmic breakdowns.
And I find that amazing. This guy has a really amazing memory.
That's because that's the way that I create. So I would not line up with somebody that says, hey, we're going to go into the studio and we're going to make this song. We have about 3 hours of time booked. Let's go do it. I would not be able to accept something like that. Because I know that I'm going to need more than 3 hours if I'm going to write something. Right? But on the flip side, you might be frustrated by working with somebody like me if you're ready to just go because you can create, and I need my time to kind of chisel through this.
And and yet, this relationship works so well. God knew what he was doing.
Well, we haven't done a song together officially yet. So.
Well, this is kind of true. This is kind of true. You're usually helping me piece together something that's already written. Which reminds me, I have an assignment that I have to complete for you. I do apologize.
Good for the reminder.
I guess I'm becoming like you. I will get on that assignment this week.
I will hold you to that.
Yes, please do. But yeah, so knowing who you are, knowing who you're not, so that you know your boundaries, and that's important in all areas of life. Knowing who you are and knowing who you are not, because in every area of life, somebody's going to try to make you like them.
And that's
on the positive, it's not negative thing.
And that's not even always
God obviously wants
malicious or intentional.
Right.
Just some people don't know how to interact with other people without letting them just be, without trying to get them to fit a certain mold or something that they're comfortable with, Some people don't know how to handle people and things that are very different and other than they are.
This is true.
So.
It is important. It's something that I know I'm personally trying to work on.
And then also, if you're always around one type of person, you will expect that from everybody.
That's true.
Because you're so comfortable and used to it. And a lot of times it can be a shock to your system to...
Wait a minute.
And to encounter somebody that's like, does not fit this mold that you've built your perspective for life around.
Yeah, agreed.